It is Friday morning. It is November the 11th, 8 o'clock on the dot. This is Coffee Talk. We get together 7 days a week, chat about what's going on in the world of weather, hopefully getting your day started off updated in terms of weather, and hey, with a smile on your face, perhaps. We have had a busy couple of days in Central Florida, haven't we? It has been rough weather, and as a matter of fact, we're doing Coffee Talk today from the Daytona Airport because we've been up in Chopper 2 this morning. We're going to be talking with Dan the pilot, if he wants to come on. We're going to be talking to photojournalist Mike Kirby, if he wants to come on. And we're going to be chatting about what we've been seeing from high above. But I also want to make sure, before we get to any of that, that we also talk about our local weather forecast, because whether or not you are cleaning up, or you've got the day off of work, or you're going to work, the weather still very much plays in. So let's just take a live look outside. This is in Marion County, a kind of grayish sky this morning. Conditions around Central Florida significantly improved over where we've been these last few days. 71 degrees in Orlando right now. It's 72 in Wildwood, 73 degrees in Daytona Beach. The winds still breezy, and we were kicked around, just not too bad, just kicked around a little bit. We'd hit a gust every now and then in Chopper 2 this morning, but it's around 5-10 miles an hour sustained, with some higher gusts around Central Florida, okay? In terms of radar, this morning when we got up in the helicopter, there were some showers out west, and our first warning live Doppler radar continues to show those showers. So let's zoom in. Marion County, the reason that it's particularly gray out by you are these showers that are kind of moving on through. Let me put this into motion for you. And you can see there's nothing strong, nothing like that, but from about Lake Weir up through the forest, back over toward Denellen, Bellevue, watching a few light showers here or there. Again, this, believe it or not, is the tail end of Nicole. Nicole continuing to pull away from us. That's the good news. And so our wind fields are kind of getting back to normal. Here's the wider perspective, but you can see it. Let me go even wider than that. Here's the wider perspective. There's Nicole over Atlanta as we speak, that center of circulation there. But notice into the Carolinas, there is some very heavy bands of rain. This morning, our friends up that direction dealing with tornado threat. Big tornado threat there. Meanwhile, on the backside of Nicole, we're getting some of those passing showers. So it's not all that bad, but there is a little bit of rain here or there that we'll have to deal with. In terms of the forecast, temperatures climbing into the lower range of the 80s by 1 o'clock, mid 80s by 3 o'clock, and there's a 20%, 30% coverage of a few passing showers around town. So not a bad day. Winds out of the kind of south-southwest running 15-20 miles an hour with some higher gusts. So yeah, there's some of that we'll have to deal with. All right, let's say good morning to y'all. How are you? Lisa's asking, do you think this is the end of hurricane season? Well, remember, hurricane season goes through the end of the month, but do I think it's the last storm for Central Florida? I flippin' hope so. I don't want to do another one. It brought back some PTSD of 2004, and for those of you that lived here in Central Florida, we didn't get hit once. We didn't get hit twice. We got hit 3 times with storms. Charlie, Francis, Jean, and then the Panhandle had Ivan. And then the next year we had Wilma. All fun stuff. Not. Connie, good morning to you. Danielle, good morning, good morning. Bruce, how are you? Good morning to you. Tina says, happy Veterans Day to all the military, past and present. Indeed, to all that have served. Thank you so much. This country obviously wouldn't be what it is without you. Every step of the way, it is our military men and women that have kept us free. So thank you very much. Nancy, good morning to you. Debbie, good morning, good morning. David, how are you? Ivan was a beast, Frank says. Yeah, it definitely was a beast. Yeah, there's always the potential for hurricanes. Yeah, that's right, Yukon. The season is just the most likely time. I mean, it's true. We have had tropical systems. Did you know this? We've had tropical systems every month of the year. Yeah, December, January. Yeah, there have been tropical systems over recorded time, which only goes back to the 1800s, and not even very well, frankly, because we didn't have satellites back then. But we've had tropical systems develop during every month of the year. Taylor says, I'm needing to make coffee still. Baby finally came down with what I've been sick with for 2 weeks. Oh boy, yeah, there's a sickness going around my house. But the kids. Hopefully it's just one of those kid bugs. What scares me about storms, so many people do not prepare at all, Marie says. I can't believe people do not take these watches seriously. Listen, evacuation orders went up in Volusia County, Flagler County, and Brevard County, and we've been flying all morning looking at these buildings literally teetering on the edge of the ocean swallowing them up. There's something like 20-something condo buildings, hotels, that sort of thing, that have been deemed unsafe. Another 20 to, I think it was 24 single-family homes in the same boat. Let me show you. I took this and I posted it on social, but I'm going to show it to you again. This is, look at that, okay? That, I just took that. So that's a hot tub on some building, okay? And you see the surf building on it, right? Like we're going to be flying chopper again in a little bit time, covering this. Each high tide is beating up and eroding and eroding and eroding more and more of the beaches. And there's a huge concern for residences right along the coastline that have been impacted by this. A huge concern. A huge concern. So, that's a big story. It's a terribly sad scenario as well. It really is. So for today, big cleanup efforts, obviously. I will tell you, we were flying around the Dunlawton Bridge. Dunlawton is closed to local traffic only. We saw the police officers there stopping traffic. So, if you're a resident beachside, you can get back. If you're not, it's not the time to come take a look and just see what's doing. It's not the time at all. It really is not. I even noticed it looked like Atlantic was shut down in many locations as well. And I would just assume because the surge came in, maybe undermined the road, or they just don't know without a seawall what that's going to look like, pushing forward, right? So, it's a real concerning thing. Yeah, Taylor, it's a big difference there. But I will say, one thing to remember when it comes to tropical systems, and I try to push this as best I can. It doesn't need to be a Category 5 hurricane for it to be an impactful thing, right? This was essentially a tropical storm in Central Florida. We had hurricane force wind gusts. We had Daytona Beach shores. I did see a 75-mile-per-hour gust. I saw one in Port St. John. So it doesn't need to be a powerful storm for it to be an impactful storm. Okay? You have a couple seconds, Mr. Kirby?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So let's talk, and we're gonna try and get Chopper Dan as well. But anyway, I'm joined here. We'll start with you, Mr. Kirby. So this
Good morning.
For those that don't know, this is Mr. Mike Kirby. He is a living legend at WESH, gentleman, scholar,
My own mind.
incredibly talented photojournalist, and we've been up flying this morning. First off, where were you during the storm? Who were you working with?
I was down in Brevard County. I was Scott Heidler and Mike Hansen. It was nasty.
Yeah.
It was nasty. There was a good blow going on.
Yeah.
And we were fortunate enough to be right there when the eye passed over.
Right.
And of all the hurricanes I've covered, that was the first eye I've been in since I was a kid. I grew up here in Daytona Beach, and there was a storm that came here when I was just a little kid, and I remember, oh, wow, that's kind of neat. It just suddenly just stops, and there's this almost surreal stillness.
Yeah.
And then it starts right back up again.
I feel like it was like a 20, 25-minute eye, maybe a 30-minute eye, something like that.
It was pretty long.
And it collapsed by the time it made it to Orlando. I was hoping to pop out for a second just to look at it, and I never got the chance to. So where exactly in Brevard were you guys?
We were down in Melbourne.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Just right there by the Melbourne airport.
Yep.
Just, I don't know, what was it, Dan? It's the Hilton.
Okay.
And we were there for a while, and I was running our big satellite truck.
Yep.
And I was very uncomfortable moving around in a big satellite truck pre-dawn hours after a storm just passed through. So we waited till the sun come up, and then we moved over towards the beach side.
Yep.
Didn't see a lot of damage there. I mean, there was, you could tell a storm passed through.
Yeah, for sure.
But there wasn't the nearly the magnitude of damage we're seeing here.
There was a 70-mile-per-hour wind gust at the Melbourne airport. That was the highest there, though Port St. John got a 75-mile-per-hour wind gust. So we've been flying all morning. You grew up here in Volusia County. What emotion strikes you when you see what kind of damage the storm has done?
It's sad.
Yeah.
It's unprecedented. I mean, in my years, which is many,
not to age you or anything,
but I have never seen anything like this. I mean, it was terrible. In fact, even after Ian, just flying around seeing the flooding, we flew over my childhood home. And there was a lot of water in that area.
Oh, wow.
And growing up there, it never had a problem.
I mean, and to not to age you or to date you, right? But like, you've been familiar with this area for a very long time.
Absolutely.
So, Karen's asking, where was the most damage from the storm? I think we've been kind of flying over that spot, right?
We haven't gotten down to Bethune Beach yet.
Right.
And one of our colleagues, Jacob Wickland, flew a drone over it yesterday, and it was terrible. I mean, and those are single-family homes.
Yeah.
It's not condos and things like that. And it just looked completely shredded.
Right.
Shredded.
The worst of the weather seemingly has been up here in Volusia County, and that, to me, as a weather guy, really pushes this point of, these storms have such far-reaching impacts, because you were in Melbourne and you would have thought Brevard County would have gotten the absolute brunt of the storm because you were closer to what would have been the eye wall. But what ended up happening, there's such ebbs and flows in this, right? As the eye of the storm was coming ashore in Brevard County, it had started to collapse, and the hurricane almost tried to throw another band structure further removed from that and more expanded form. And I remember being on the air with Kellyanne yesterday morning, seeing that band coming in to Volusia County and saying, like, this is going to be the spot. And, my in-laws live up here, and it was like, oh my gosh, what is that going to look like? Having known after Ian just how beat up it was. I mean, Dan, we were up here, and we're going to talk to Dan, if Dan wants to. We're going to talk to Dan in a little bit.
He's better looking than I am.
But we were flying this exact area Monday, knowing that we had been beat up so badly after Ian, and kind of worried about what it was going to look like. And for me, I it's one of those cases of, you knew it was going to be a big beach erosion event, but until you see it, you don't know exactly how bad it's going to be. And now we have something like 25 single-family homes deemed uninhabitable. What is that? Do they have to come down? Or, I mean, a lot of those single-family homes have to come down. But the condos, there's something like 20 condos, hotels. Are they going to be able to put back sand underneath foundation, or do the buildings have to come down? I mean, it's, some of them are 2 stories. Some of them are 18, 20 stories. I mean, that's a lot of weight on these pylons. And in some cases, the pylons have even given way. And certainly that's an engineering question, and maybe there's an engineer in the room. But how do you do that and do it safely, right? And with Surfside so fresh in our minds,
Exactly. And like we saw, some of them were literally, I'm going to use the word teetering.
Yeah.
Teetering on the edge. They were so undermined. And some of the pilings were actually gone.
Right.
And, structurally, they were just completely unsound.
And it was so interesting to see, too, because depending on the spot of shore that we were at, you could see some of the newer buildings where those footers, they went deep. Whereas some of the older buildings, it's like they dug a little trench, filled it with concrete, and that was good. And it had been good for 30, 40, 50 years. But here it just takes one storm, which was a tropical storm at the time, essentially.
And that, to me, is kind of striking, because this was a minimal hurricane.
Yeah.
You're the expert on that, but it's a minimal hurricane. And I remember back in the day, we watched Floyd. And,
I remember Floyd, 99.
Yes. And just recently, Matthew, running up the coast. And we were, I'll use an old phrase, my mother, my dear sated mother, as nervous as a black widow spider on its honeymoon.
Oh, yeah.
Those storms were huge, and they were right here. And just imagine the impact they would have had.
And they curved off.
Yes, they did, thank goodness. But if, this was a minimal Cat 1, if we had a 3, a 4, or God forbid, a 5, that whole beach side would have been devastating.
For those that remember, Floyd, if I recall, was a Cat 5 coming right at us. And it was like, it was like Dorian, I remember. Dorian stopped and then turned. Floyd was the same thing. Floyd was a monster storm, and we knew it was going to turn, but did it turn in time? There were some, that was before I was in television weather, just before. But I remember watching the coverage and being afraid, because these beaches do not do well in those kinds of storms. No beach will. And this was a tropical storm that made landfall, by the way, somewhere near Vero Beach. So you're not even talking Brevard. It made landfall in Indian River County in the Treasure Coast.
It's just the impact of a major storm.
Yeah.
I can't even fathom it after seeing the damage we've seen.
Imagine what it would have been.
Hurricane.
Imagine what it would have been with, instead of 75 mile per hour wind gusts, you were talking sustained 130. I mean, it hurts you in your stomach seeing what we do. Kelly says we lost our roof in West Melbourne. Wind was insane. A huge gust water poured through. That's terrifying to see. That's just terrifying. Yukon says we have problems now due to development, not to judge. If every square foot of concrete we add, we lose the ability to absorb water. There's something to be said for these barriers. Flying this morning, let me see if I can find the picture. It's interesting that you mentioned that. I took this picture, and if you look, and I don't know that this will translate, and it's holding an iPhone, but
that works.
If you look, what is the only thing stopping the ocean right at that moment? It's man-made seawalls. And what was giving way? Man-made seawalls, right? Some held, some didn't. And if it holds this time, great. Will it hold the next time? The next, because no matter what, if there's only one consistent thing in life, it's change. And there's always going to be these storms that come through and change the ocean. But if we dictate this is where the ocean stops, you can't promise that Mother Nature's not going to take it away.
She's going to get her way. She's always going to get her way.
Any other things to add, sir?
Well, no, I'm going to give it to... Yes, I'd like to just say hello to all the veterans out there.
Yes, sir.
And happy Veterans Day. And there's one in particular that I'd like to say hello to.
Yes,
it's
sir.
my son, Ryan. He was a veteran of the 101st Airborne Division. He was in there for a long time. He's highly decorated combat vet, and I'm proud of him, and I'm sure I hope he's having a good day today.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much for your service and for everyone's service. Thank you, Mr. Kirby.
man.
Do you have a couple of minutes to chat, sir?
Go on in, Dan.
All right. He's drinking his coffee, so you know he's going to be in a good mood. We're hanging at the FBO. We're hanging at the air. This should be called hanger talk instead of coffee talk this morning. All right. First off, have you done any of this stuff for us yet?
Nope.
You're fairly new. This is new Chopper Dan. We had Chopper Dan McCarthy, and now we've got new Chopper Dan. We've traded in for the newer model. First off, welcome to Central Florida. You've been through a couple of storms in your time here. First off, you had mentioned that you were flying last night and coming back out and flying again this morning. You noticed some changes. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, just some of the buildings that were just hanging there last night. We saw that they were washed into some of them were completely collapsed and demolished now.
So there was a significant change, even in just like a 12-hour time.
12 hours, yeah.
Wow. And we're building now to high tide, so when we go back up flying, I'd be curious to see the difference from us before high tide to kind of during high tide.
Yeah, because we're just talking as we're flying out there. We're seeing the waves kind of getting underneath the foundation of some of those buildings even now, and the tide's coming in, like you said, and we're going to, well, how many buildings are we going to see that are going to come down over the next few hours here?
Right. And it seems like, and I think that we could kind of agree with it, it seems like it really has been from about Wilbur by the Sea, Daytona Beach Shores area that we have seen the most significant erosion concerns, at least thus far. Now, I think that as we go exploring, we'll certainly find little pockets, but there was that widespread swath of devastation in that area, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we've been flying around that area, and I'm curious to get any of your reports on other areas that we should go fly later on. Frank says, yeah, but Surfside had issues from day one. Well, I don't know about that, But what I do know, though, is that anytime you construct something so close to the ocean, you have to take all of your mitigating factors, and knowing that Mother Nature will always win, right? The power of water is so incredible. And even just this morning, we were noticing, and I showed them the video of like that hot tub and watching as we were building toward high tide, and we were discussing, like, does the hot tub end up washing out later today? Does that happen?
A lot of the seawall. What I noticed there was sections of the seawall that were completely gone. There was no rubble there, so it must have washed out to the sea. That's all I can think. It just washed out, just completely.
Well, and that brings up a good point too, because officials are saying, like, do not take your boat out, because even if you don't see anything at the surface, who knows what's underneath? We even saw some people walking on the. There was no sliver of beach, but they found a way to do it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, right? Like,
I wouldn't want to be the one trapped between the sea coming in and the sea wall.
Right. And listen, I love going for a walk on the beach. I'm a romantic like anybody else, but not today, not in these kinds of situations. So what do you think we should go fly next? What once we lift here from Daytona, what do you think our game plan should be?
I think we're talking about going up to just north of here, right? Just to check out that sea. Last night we did truck southbound.
Okay.
East Smyrna and south from there, and we saw some damage as well there, but not as significant, not as impacted as here.
All right, so we'll head up to like Ormond by the Sea, maybe sneak up to Flagler, check it out, and then I definitely want to at least try and get down toward Brevard County and see the like around the seashore and get as close to Artemis as we can. They've got TFRs up, so we can't exactly fly out that direction. So very cool. Hey, thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, and I think the difference between this storm and the last one, I mean, it's just it seems like it did more damage to the to the beach erosion versus a lot of flooding.
Well, Ian just put down feet of water, but Ian did a number erosion wise, and it's just kind of this one came in right after and finished the job. And my concern, being that you're new to the East Coast, you know those Pacific storms that came from the West Coast. Dan, we're going to this winter have at some point, it's like a nor'easter, where we'll get this little storm system off the coast and it'll just batter our beaches. I feel like, Kirby, correct me if I'm like 2 times a winter we get these storms off the coast that just decimate the beaches. This year I'm really concerned about those, because those winter storms that come in, they're just going to come back in where Ian and Nicole did. And so I kind of worry that this is not over, even if we take steps to try and fix what we can. So
I think we saw an area where they just freshly installed a and I don't know if it was a temporary seawall. It was they drove those metal pylons into the ground there, and they were destroyed. A lot of it came down, and I mean the houses behind them were damaged, so it didn't work. So. And there was a lot of scramble to fix some of those walls before this storm came in. So what's going to happen now? They're going to put another wall up, and then so I think they're going to have to really rethink of what they're going to do there to fix it more permanent.
And this is not a problem that's going to go away. I mean, when we look at, just think back to like Hurricane Andrew. Hurricane Andrew made landfall in South Florida in 1992. How many more people live beachside in Florida today versus in 92? And to that point, you're talking about more people in those impact zones. And they're building right up to where they've determined, whoever they are, they've determined that's where the beach ends, right? So now you've made your barrier, and sure, you'll make it through a few storms, but the reason evacuation orders exist is because there's going to be one storm eventually that you're not going to make it through, right? And so, looking at this case, sure, maybe you live in Orlando and you're like, well, it's not a problem for me. Well, the storm impacted Orlando too. But in this case, there are people's homes that are essentially wiped into the ocean, right? Thank God that they left. Could you imagine? I was thinking yesterday, what if you are a knucklehead that said, I'm fine. I don't have to worry about it. And then during the storm, your house starts crumbling. I mean, you're not even talking water coming in. You're talking about the house falling apart. Could you imagine what that's like? And then you've got nowhere to go because there's water everywhere. Your house is crumbling. You're in trouble, My God, could you imagine that? I mean, you're a parent. You know. I mean, you imagine?
No, it's a hard thing to put yourself in those people's shoes and think about their loss and coming in so fast, because the storm just kind of came ashore so fast. We didn't have a lot of warning, and then a lot of people just picked up and left, I imagine. And
thank God they did.
Stuff,
Well, and then here we are. We're 24 hours later, and the next high tide cycles are continuing to play into it. So, that's remarkable. Cool, man.
And we can play on these houses here. The damage we seen last hurricane. We seen the damage. Not on shore as much as we've seen inland. There was a lot of flooding and a lot of devastation there.
That's why each storm, they get a name because they have a personality, and each storm is different. So when I hear people say, "Oh, it's only a Category 1, I don't have to worry about it," it's like, I mean, y'all, there are homes swept out, and it only takes one storm with the right direction of wind and the right gust at the right time to really do the wrong thing, and so. Every storm has to be taken for what it is in such unique cases.
And one thing that I would say, a lot of people they see what they see at the station is they see it from our lens, from a camera. That's you get so much. You can only get so much in a picture, right?
Yeah.
But when we're up there, really, when I get up there and fly, and then it's just amazing sometimes how wide the devastation is, and you don't get to see that. I'm looking down the shore, we can see like we talked about, we can look way ahead of the camera, and we see, there's another place, there's another place. This
and
place
we may not show all of them because you don't want to zoom in, look, zoom out, zoom in, and it makes for nauseating TV. But to see that scope, you're right. It hits differently in person, and we can only try to explain it as best we can. But you're not going to zoom in and around and move all over the place. It will nauseate you. So.
And there were places where we saw, places that were being washed out, and we didn't even get to zoom in or to show it. We might not be able to do it. So just because of time, and there's so many. There's so many.
So a lot of people are asking, like, well, what about this beach and what about this beach? What we're just trying to do is to find the spots that kind of have a broader scale impact, just because it's, you've got this hit, you've got this hit. So, So anyway, all right. So let's talk 7-day forecast, people. And then we're going to go take off and go flying again. Here's our 7-day forecast. Thankfully, Mother Nature giving us much better weather, partly cloudy skies. Dan, thank you so much, buddy. 77 degrees, our high temperature on Sunday. It's looking much, much, much better. Though we're back into the 80s next week. And I will tell you, for right now, there is nothing tropical. Thank God, nothing tropical that we have to worry about in Central Florida anytime soon. Let's hope that the season is over with. All right, we're going to go flying. Live coverage continues on CW18 and, of course, today on WESH 2 News at noon. In the meantime, be the sunshine at someone else's day. Thank you so much for hanging out for Coffee Talk. I will see you today at 3:30. I will do the afternoon update. All right?